Ancient Egyptian civilization. Egypt is located in the northeastern part of Africa and consists of a long, narrow valley along the Nile River basin. This region has an average width of 5 to 22 kilometers, bordered by steep rocky mountain ranges like towering walls, with the Red Sea to the east and the scorching, arid Libyan desert to the west. In ancient times, Egypt was largely isolated from the outside world. Only in the northeast was there a narrow land bridge, the Sinai Peninsula, that connected Egypt to Western Asia. Through this land passage, Egyptian pharaohs led their armies to invade neighboring countries. It was also along this route that foreign armies and caravans of merchants laden with goods from Asian countries and the eastern Mediterranean arrived in Egypt. Anthropological and archaeological records confirm that the Nile River basin had human habitation dating back to the Paleolithic era. These early inhabitants were African natives formed through the amalgamation of various tribes. On the other hand, it is also likely that a group of Hamitic people from Western Asia migrated into the lower Nile region, gradually assimilating with the native population and giving rise to a new ethnic group, the Egyptian people. An Egyptian priest from the 3rd century BCE named Manetho compiled the genealogy of the pharaohs from the first king Menes up to his own time. In total, he identified 31 dynasties, forming a system that is still used to this day. The early dynastic period includes the 1st and 2nd dynasties beginning around 3100 BCE and lasting until 2686 BCE. The first king listed in the genealogical records is Menes, who came from the Thennes region in southern Egypt. According to ancient legend, Menes was the one who unified Upper and Lower Egypt, thereby founding the first dynasty. During the early dynastic period, the first king consolidated his control over Egypt by establishing the capital at Memphis. From this strategic location, he could oversee the labor force and agricultural production of the fertile Delta region, as well as key trade routes leading to the Levant. The growing power and wealth of the kings during the early dynastic period were reflected in the elaborate tombs and funerary structures built at Abydos, a sacred site used to honor the pharaohs as deities after their death. Though still primitive in many aspects, ancient Egypt had already exhibited several characteristics of an Oriental despotic state. This marked a clear sign that the ancient Egyptian people had entered the age of civilization. The pharaohs of the first dynasty ruled for over 250 years, while the second dynasty lasted for nearly 300 years. The Old Kingdom period in ancient Egyptian history includes the 3rd to the 6th dynasties, spanning from around 2686 BCE to 2181 BCE. This was a time when the centralized state was consolidated, and it marked the first flourishing of Egypt's economic, cultural, political, and military development. After completing the unification of Egypt, the pharaohs of the 3rd and 4th dynasties launched successive campaigns to invade Nubia and Sinai in order to expand their territory, plunder resources, and capture slaves. Internally, the pharaohs of the 3rd and 4th dynasties worked tirelessly to strengthen the centralized government. One of the manifestations of the immense power and authority of the pharaonic government was the construction of pyramid structures. Most of the pharaohs from these two dynasties built pyramids for themselves, varying in size. The first pharaoh of the 3rd dynasty, Djoser, built his pyramid at Saqqara. It was a 6-tiered structure standing 60 meters tall. The largest among them is the Pyramid of Giza, which stands at 146 meters. It is also the most magnificent pyramid still remaining in Egypt today. Tens of thousands of people were forced into labor on these monumental projects, and many of them perished in the scorching sands of the desert. Only a powerful authoritarian government could mobilize such a vast labor force and resources to serve for war and construction projects, while also being strong enough to suppress the resistance of slaves and the impoverished population. According to legend, the founder of the 5th dynasty was the son of a high priestess and the sun god. Thus, the limitless power of the pharaohs was sanctified. The pharaohs of the 5th and 6th dynasties were even better positioned to successfully continue the domestic and foreign policies of their predecessors. However, by the end of the 6th dynasty, continuous wars not only devastated the region surrounding Egypt, but also weakened the power of the pharaonic government. This led to a period of fragmentation and division. The power of local nobles grew stronger and stronger. They concentrated control over tax collection, judicial authority, and the organization of their own independent armies. In this context, the pharaohs effectively only ruled over a specific region, much like regional lords. Internal conflicts within the royal court also occurred continuously, with usurpations and power struggles. This period is known as the First Intermediate Period, which includes the 7th to 10th dynasties lasting approximately 125 years from 281 BC to 2055 BC. The process of reunifying the country took place through a fierce, intense, and prolonged struggle between two major noble factions in Heracleopolis and Thebes. Thanks to its advantageous geographical location and support from the southern provinces, the noble faction in Thebes triumphed. The leader of Thebes, Mentuhotep, became the founder of the 11th dynasty and the pharaoh who unified all of Egypt. This marked the beginning of the Middle Kingdom period in ancient Egyptian history. This period included the 11th to the 14th dynasties lasting from 2134 BCE to 1690 BCE. The pharaohs during this period restored the prosperity and stability of the country, which in turn promoted the revival of art, literature, and grand construction projects. Mentuhotep II and his successors of the 11th dynasty ruled from Thebes. However, when the vizier Amenemhat-Boermer ascended to the throne around 1985 BCE, he moved the capital of the country to the city of Ichtawi. From Ichtawi, the pharaohs of the 12th dynasty initiated land reclamation and irrigation programs to increase agricultural output in the region. At the same time, the military launched campaigns to reoccupy Nubia, a region rich in stone and gold resources. Meanwhile, the people constructed a defensive structure in the eastern part of the Delta Plains, known as the King's Wall, to protect the land from external invasions. Around 1785 BCE, when the power of the Middle Kingdom pharaohs weakened Asian inhabitants living in the city of Avaris in the eastern Delta Plains, seized control of the region. Eventually, they took power in Egypt and became known as the Hyksos. The pharaonic government had to retreat to Thebes, where the kings were regarded as vassals and were especially required to pay tribute. This period is known as the Second Intermediate Period, which includes dynasties 15 to Suabini lasting about 125 years, from 1674 BCE to 1549 BCE. The Hyksos quickly adopted the Egyptian model of governance and proclaimed themselves as pharaohs, integrating many Egyptian elements into their Bronze Age culture. However, the Egyptian people despised foreign rule and continuously rebelled in resistance. The leader of the liberation movement in Egypt at that time was a nobleman named Osit from the city of Thebes. After driving out the invaders, he completed the task of freeing the country around 1560 BCE and became the founder of the 18th dynasty, marking the beginning of the New Kingdom period. The New Kingdom period, lasting about 500 years, 1549 to 1069 BCE, includes the 18th, 19th, and 20th dynasties. This was the most prosperous and powerful era in ancient Egyptian history. The pharaohs strengthened the borders and enhanced diplomacy with neighboring nations such as the Mitanni Empire, Assyria, and Canaan. Under Thutmose I and his grandson Thutmose III, large-scale military campaigns helped build an unprecedented Egyptian empire. When Thutmose III passed away in 1425 BCE, the territory of Egypt extended from Niaa in northwestern Syria to the Fourth Cataract of the Nile in Nubia. At the same time, the pharaohs conducted a series of grand construction campaigns to honor Amun, the principal god worshipped at Karnak. The Karnak Temple became the largest temple ever built in Egypt, accompanied by monuments that honored military and political achievements, both real and idealized. Around 1279 BC, Ramses II ascended to the throne as pharaoh. He was famous as a bold leader and an outstanding general. Ramses II commanded the Egyptian army in the Battle of Kadesh against the Hittites. Although neither side achieved a decisive victory, the two empires signed a peace treaty, one of the oldest treaties recorded in history. This was also a significant milestone, as both powers were concerned about the expansion of the Assyrian Empire. However, after withdrawing from the Near East, Egypt began to weaken. The wealth of the country made it an attractive target for invasions, particularly from the Libyans in the west and the seafaring peoples. Initially, the Egyptian army was able to fend off these attacks, but eventually they lost control over the southern territories in Canaan, most of which fell into the hands of the Assyrians. The pressure from external forces became more severe due to internal issues such as corruption and social instability. After the death of Ramses XI in 1069 BCE, the New Kingdom period came to an end, ushering in the Third Intermediate Period, which lasted until around 664 BCE. This period, which includes the 21st to the 25th dynasties, was marked by a significant decline in central authority and ongoing political instability. Egypt was divided in decline and fell into the hands of foreign powers. In the mid-10th century BCE, a Libyan military leader staged a coup and established a foreign dynasty to rule Egypt. By the early 8th century BCE, taking advantage of the chaotic situation, the Nubians from the south advanced and overthrew the Libyans, founding a new foreign dynasty in 726 BCE. However, by 671 BCE, Egypt was once again conquered by the Assyrian Empire. Assyrian rule did not last long. Under the leadership of a northern nobleman named Psamtik, the Egyptian people rose up, expelled the Assyrians, and restored independence. Psamtik became the founder of the 26th dynasty, marking the beginning of the late period, the final short-lived era of independence in ancient Egyptian history, lasting from 664 to 525 BCE. However, from the latter half of the 6th century BCE onward, Egypt was repeatedly invaded by the Persian Empire. By 332 BCE, Alexander the Great of Macedonia conquered Egypt. After his death, one of his generals, Ptolemy, took power and established a Hellenistic dynasty that lasted from the 4th century BCE to the 1st century BCE. For more than 2,000 years after the late period, Egypt successively became a colony of several powerful empires. It was not until 1954, when President Gamal Abdel Nasser came to power, that Egypt finally had a native ruler truly governing the country, thus ending more than 2 millennia of foreign domination ever since Pharaoh Tenochtitlan was overthrown by the Persians in 343 BCE. Ancient Mesopotamian civilization. In Western Asia, there are 2 major rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, which originate from the Taurus Mountains, run parallel to each other, and flow into the Persian Gulf. The lowland plains located between the middle and lower courses of these 2 rivers are known as Mesopotamia. Just like the Nile River in Egypt, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers played a crucial role in the formation and development of the nations in the region. The terrain of Mesopotamia is relatively flat, lacking rugged natural borders for protection. Located between the scorching Syrian desert to the west and the arid Iranian plateau to the east, this region was frequently eyed and coveted by surrounding tribes. The history of Mesopotamia is closely tied to social upheavals and constant wars among various peoples. As a result, ancient communities assimilated with one another, jointly creating a long-standing and unique culture. The Sumerians are regarded as the earliest inhabitants and the first to establish an ancient civilization in the Mesopotamian basin around the 4th millennium BCE. They migrated from the forested mountainous regions of Central Asia to settle in southern Mesopotamia, where they based their economy primarily on irrigated agriculture and founded many city-states such as Uruk and Nippur. Since the 3rd millennium BCE, the Sumerians had known how to use bronze to make weapons, production tools, household items, and jewelry. The development of private ownership led to the formation of 2 basic social classes in Mesopotamia, the ruling class and the subjugated class. The leader of each state was commonly referred to as Ensi. At the beginning of the 3rd millennium BC, Semitic tribes from the desert periphery began migrating southward, flooding into the region of Western Asia. They lived as nomads across the vast lands from Syria to the Arabian desert. Among the Semitic tribes, the Akkadians settled in the Mesopotamian uplands, establishing the city of Akkad and as their capital, and founding their own kingdom. The founder of the Akkadian kingdom was Sargon. After establishing the kingdom, Sargon consecutively conquered over 50 Sumerian city-states, expanding his influence as far as Syria and Palestine. Under his reign, a vast empire was established, stretching from the Persian Gulf to the upper reaches of the Tigris River. Sargon also adopted Sumerian culture and carried out the process of assimilation between the Akkadian and Sumerian people. During his reign, Sargon paid particular attention to the development of agriculture, strengthening and expanding the irrigation system, and establishing standardized measurement systems to facilitate trade, which was highly developed in Mesopotamia. Under the reign of Sargon's grandson, Naram-Sin, the Akkadian Empire flourished even further. Through military campaigns and invasions, Naram-Sin expanded the empire's territory as far as the mountainous regions of Armenia and the eastern shores of the Mediterranean. However, by the time of the last king of the Akkadian dynasty, the social situation in Mesopotamia had entered a period of severe crisis. Cities continuously revolted, and uprisings by the poor and slaves became frequent. In particular, the Akkadians had to face continuous attacks from the Elamites in the east, the Amorites in the west, and the Gutians from the northeast. As a result, the entire Mesopotamian region fell under the control of the Gutians for about 60 to 70 years. Under the rule of the Gutians, the history of Mesopotamia was almost interrupted. Heavy taxes and forced labor made the lives of the people extremely miserable. The economy was devastated and the irrigation system was neglected, causing the residents of Mesopotamia to fall into a state of exhaustion. The hatred of the Sumerians and Akkadians toward the Gutians grew stronger. Around 2150 BCE, King Utu-Hagol of Uruk gathered the forces of the Sumerians and Akkadians to drive the Gutians out of the Mesopotamian region, restoring the independence of the Sumerian and Akkadian cities. After this victory, the power of the Sumerians was restored, and cities like Uruk-ur and Lagash had the opportunity to thrive again, maintaining a dominant role in the region. From 2112 BC, Mesopotamia entered the period of domination by the Ur III dynasty, the third dynasty of Ur. The founder of this dynasty was King Ur-Nammu, followed by his son, Shulgi. The two kings focused on consolidating central power, building a strong monarchical state, and controlling the entire Mesopotamian region. They also launched several military campaigns to expand their territory, attacking the Elam region in the east and conquering Syria and Anatolia in the west. However, the Ur III dynasty was constantly faced with resistance from the local aristocracy, along with continuous invasions from the Elamites and the Amorites. During the reign of King Ibisin, the last successor, social conflicts grew more intense and the struggles of slaves and the poor increased. Finally, around 2024 BCE, the alliance of the Elamites and Amorites overthrew the Ur III dynasty, ending the domination of the ancient Sumerians and ushering in a new historical period for Mesopotamia. After the victory, the Elamites only looted the wealth and then withdrew their forces, while the Amorites abandoned their nomadic lifestyle, settled permanently, and established their own cities in Mesopotamia. Among these, the city of Babylon stood out. King Hammurabi was the one who built Babylon into a unified and powerful nation. He used both military force and diplomacy to gradually conquer the small nations in the region, bringing central Mesopotamia under Babylon's control. From then on, the Sumerians and Amorites living there were collectively known as the Babylonians. The period from 1894 BCE to 1595 BCE was the most glorious era of the Old Babylonian Kingdom. Under Hammurabi, the capital Babylon became a major political, economic, and cultural center of the ancient East. However, after Hammurabi's death, 1750 BCE, the Babylonian kingdom began to weaken. His son, King Samsu-Iluna, had to deal with rebellions from slaves, the poor, and local nobles. At the same time, attacks from the Hittites in the north, the Elamites in the east, and the Kassites in the west continuously threatened the kingdom. By 1595 BC, the Hittites from Anatolia unexpectedly attacked and captured Babylon. They then withdrew, leaving control to the Kassites, who ruled Babylon from 1518 to 1165 BC. However, from this point onward, Babylon's political role gradually weakened, being overshadowed by the Assyrian Empire to the north for many centuries. It was not until the 7th century BCE that Babylon's power was restored, when the Chaldeans, a branch of the Semitic people, established the Neo-Babylonian kingdom. Prior to that, the Chaldeans had settled in southern Mesopotamia in the 9th century BCE under the control of Assyria. However, by 626 BCE, as the Assyrian Empire weakened, the Chaldeans formed an alliance with the Medes, launched an attack, and destroyed Assyria. The regions of Mesopotamia, Syria, and Palestine were subsequently brought under Chaldean control, with the capital established in Babylon. From then on, this state was referred to in history as the Neo-Babylonian Kingdom. The most famous dynasty of Neo-Babylon was during the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar II. In his reign, 605–562 BCE, he brought Babylon back to its peak, conducting numerous military campaigns to expand the territory all the way to the eastern Mediterranean coast. Under his reign, Babylon also fought against Egypt. Although they were unable to defeat Egypt, they managed to thwart Egypt's expansionist ambitions in the Near East. After the death of King Nebuchadnezzar II, the Neo-Babylonian Empire fell into internal turmoil. Within less than 25 years, 4 kings ascended to the throne. In 538 BC, the Persian Empire under the leadership of Cyrus the Great defeated Babylon. The last king of Neo-Babylon, Nabonidus, was captured, marking the end of the kingdom's existence. The ancient history of Mesopotamia is the history of many peoples and successive nations. The brilliant cultural achievements of Mesopotamia are the result of the blending and inheritance between the Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian, and Chaldean civilizations. Among them, the Sumerians played a pioneering role, being the ones who laid the foundation for the formation and development of one of humanity's greatest civilizations. Mesopotamian culture was not only comprehensive and rich, but also had a profound influence on other countries in the ancient Near East. Ancient Greek civilization. Greece and Rome in ancient history were great civilizations located in the Mediterranean region, with vast territories that included the southern part of the Balkan Peninsula, coastal regions of Asia Minor, and the islands of the Aegean Sea. The Greek mainland holds significant importance in history with its unique geographical structure, consisting of plains, hills, rivers, and interwoven bays and straits, creating small, isolated geographical areas. Before the 3rd millennium BCE, indigenous people lived in some areas of the Greek mainland and large islands in the Aegean Sea. They were the creators of the early Greek civilization, notably the Minoan civilization. The Minoan civilization developed on the island of Crete from the 3rd millennium BCE to the end of the 2nd millennium BCE, with its peak period occurring in the 17th, 19th centuries BCE. During this time, Crete had up to 90 cities divided into 8 political units, including many palaces and seaports. The Mycenaean civilization emerged slightly later, around the end of the 3rd millennium BCE on the Greek mainland. It reached its peak from the 15th to the 12th century BCE. Through the artifacts that have been discovered, it is known that agriculture and animal husbandry were the main economic activities of the Greeks, while handicrafts also developed significantly. Their handcrafted products were widely traded not only within the region, but also with distant areas such as southern Italy, Egypt, and Asia Minor. In summary, the Mycenaean civilization was a state-level society with a class structure and organizational system similar to those of the ancient Eastern civilizations. The Minoan and Mycenaean civilizations declined at the end of the 2nd millennium BCE during the large-scale migrations of Greek tribes from the north who conquered and settled in the region. By the beginning of the 1st millennium BCE, Greek society had undergone significant changes. The establishment and development of private property led to deep class divisions with 3 main social classes: the aristocracy, commoners, and slaves. The Greek state emerged in the form of city-states, also known as polities. Each city-state functioned as a fully independent state with its own government, military laws, system of measurement and currency, as well as its own patron deity. Greek city-states emerged between the 8th and 6th centuries BCE, with the most prominent examples being Sparta on the Peloponnesian Peninsula and Athens on the Attican Peninsula. These 2 city-states represented 2 distinct paths in state formation, economic development and social structure, and they also played crucial roles in Greek history. While the Greek city-states were thriving in Western Asia, the Persian Empire was founded in the mid-6th century BCE. By the reign of King Darius I, the Persian Empire had expanded its territory to encompass many major centers of Eastern civilization, such as Mesopotamia, Asia Minor, and Egypt. Persia possessed a powerful military force, including infantry, cavalry, and a navy with the ambition of dominating the Greek city-states. In Asia Minor, the ancient Greek cities were unable to maintain their independence and fell under the control of the Persian Empire. In 509 BCE, the people of Miletus rose up against the Persian forces and called upon Athens and other city-states for support. Athens sent 20 warships to assist and took part in the campaign against Persia, but it was not until 494 BCE that the Persian army finally suppressed the uprising. With the intention of invasion, King Darius I declared war on the Greek city-states and began the Greco-Persian Wars in 490 BCE. In this campaign, the Persian forces attacked cities in Ionia and launched a large fleet to destroy the Greeks. However, at the Battle of Marathon, the Greek army under the leadership of Athens defeated the Persians. After Darius I passed away in 485 BCE, his son Xerxes I ascended the throne and was determined to fulfill his father's ambitions. He prepared a new invasion campaign, mobilizing forces from Egypt and Phoenicia, and planned to dig a canal through the Hellespont to allow warships to pass through. In 479 BCE, Xerxes launched another invasion of Greece from Thrace, advancing into Attica and besieging the capital Athens. The Greek allied forces led by King Leonidas of Sparta came to relieve Athens, defeating the Persian army and forcing them to retreat. The subsequent bloody battle at Plataea resulted in the complete annihilation of the Persian forces. The third Persian attempt to invade Greece ended in a severe defeat. Taking advantage of their momentum, the Greek navy counterattacked the Persians all the way to the Dardanelles and achieved consecutive victories. In 448 BC, Persia was forced to sign a peace treaty with Greece, recognizing the independence of the Greek city-states in Asia Minor and renouncing its dominance over the Aegean Sea. The Greco-Persian War ended with a complete victory for the Greek city-states. After the war during the 5th and 4th centuries BC, Athens' economy reached its peak. Athens completely dominated the seas and also led in commercial power. The leader of Athens at that time, Pericles, used the tribute from the members of the Delian League, an alliance of city-states allied with Athens, to build the Parthenon and other major architectural works of ancient Athens. By the middle of the 5th century BCE, there were two opposing military alliances in Greece: the Delian League led by Athens and the Peloponnesian League led by Sparta. The economic and political conflicts between these two organizations became increasingly intense. In 431 BCE, war broke out between Athens and Sparta, along with their respective allies. The conflict lasted for 27 years, involving most of the Greek city-states and severely devastating the economy and social life of Greece. In the end, the Peloponnesian League emerged victorious, and Sparta rose to dominance in the ancient Greek world. While the Greek city-states had reached their golden age of development in the region of Macedonia in southern Europe, the inhabitants were still living in the final stages of tribal society. Many historians believe that the people of Macedonia were also a branch of the Greek ethnic group. Alexander I is considered the founder of the Macedonian state, and Archelaus, his successor, further developed and strengthened the kingdom. Archelaus made Pelua the capital, established a new monetary system, built many roads, and strengthened the military forces. By the 6th century BC, through absorbing and learning from the cultural, scientific, and technological achievements of neighboring countries, Macedonia rapidly developed and became a powerful nation in the Balkan region. King Philip II laid the foundation for the prosperity of Macedonia through a series of economic, social, and military reforms. He strengthened the military forces and stockpiled provisions to implement an expansionist policy of conquest. In 338 BC, he led a large army to march straight into the Greek mainland. Once again, the Greek city-states united to resist, led by Athens and Thebes. However, unlike during the time of resisting Persia, the Greek city-states, for various reasons, failed to unite and successfully resist. The Greek coalition was decisively defeated at the Battle of Chaeronea. In 337 BCE, Philip II convened a conference of all Greek city-states and established the Corinthian League. In form, the city-states retained their independence, but in reality, they were subordinated to Macedonia. In 336 BCE, Philip II was assassinated, and his 20-year-old son Alexander succeeded him. Often known as Alexander the Great, he immediately set into motion his plan to conquer Persia. The Macedonian army advanced rapidly, capturing the capital city of Babylon from the Persian Empire, which fell after 200 years of existence. Not stopping there, Alexander invaded and conquered the kingdom of Media, pushing deep into Central Asia. He only stopped at the banks of the Indus River, exhausted and constantly harassed by Indian forces. Although his wars were marked by numerous victories, Alexander established a vast empire that included many regions and nations with high levels of development, many of the centers of the ancient world. Alexander harbored ambitions to conquer the Arabian Peninsula and actively explored the waterways along the Euphrates River, impossible landing points on the peninsula. However, at that moment on June 13, 323 BC, Alexander died from malignant malaria. His sudden death plunged the Macedonian Empire into a severe crisis. Eventually, by the 3rd century BC, Macedonia was fragmented into several smaller states. At the same time, the Roman Empire, originating from central Italy, steadily expanded. From the 3rd to the 1st century BC, Rome took control of the entire Mediterranean region, including the territories of Greece and Macedonia. Ancient Greek culture was incredibly brilliant, rich, diverse, and comprehensive. The peak of this ancient civilization lasted from the 4th century BC, when Alexander of Macedonia embarked on his conquests, until the 1st century BC, when the Roman Empire dominated the entire Mediterranean. This period is known as the Hellenistic era. During this period, Greek civilization was strongly spread to surrounding countries, shaping the prosperous face of Eastern nations, including parts of Europe. It was a time of cultural exchange between the East and West, and also the period with the greatest racial mixing in human history. Ancient Roman civilization. The birthplace of ancient Roman culture was Italy, a large peninsula shaped like a boot that juts into the Mediterranean. The northern part of the peninsula is bordered by the Alps, forming a natural border between Italy and Europe, while the other 3 sides are surrounded by the sea. Near the Italian mainland, there are 3 large islands: Sicily to the south, and Corfu and Sardinia to the west of the peninsula. Italy was inhabited relatively early by Europeans since the 2nd millennium BCE. Many tribes lived here. In the 8th century BCE, the Greeks migrated to southern Italy and established their city-states. Among the many groups living in Italy, the Latins in the lower reaches of the Tiber River were the most important in the formation of the city-state of Rome and later the Roman Empire. The Roman kingdom period in Roman history marked the final stages of the clan-based system existing within a military democratic organization. According to legend, the city of Rome was founded by Romulus in 753 BC. Initially, it was just a settlement or shrine located on the banks of the Tiber River, inhabited by 3 Latin tribes, each consisting of 100 clans. The members of these 300 clans had equal rights in terms of economics and politics and were known as Roman citizens. The social management of the Roman tribes during this period was handled by 3 institutions: the Senate, the Popular Assembly, and the King. The Senate, consisting of the leaders of the 300 clans, was the supreme governing body with the authority to make most of the important decisions for the Romans. The Popular Assembly, also known as the Curiate Assembly, consisted of all the men from the 300 clans, and each member had the right to vote in the assembly. The king was elected by the Curiate Assembly, had no hereditary succession, and could be removed by the assembly. The king was essentially the military leader of the alliance of the 3 tribes. During the monarchy period, the Euse people had the upper hand in Rome, and thus all the kings were from the Euse tribe. However, around 510 BCE, tensions between the Roman people and the Euse became intense. The Roman people rose up, and the uprising ended the monarchy period, ushering in the Republic era. The People's Assembly was replaced by the Centuriate Assembly, an assembly of armed men. The Centuriate Assembly elected 2 consuls with 1-year terms and equal power, and they were responsible for directly overseeing all social affairs. The Senate, consisting of 300 wealthy aristocrats, was the standing body of the government responsible for carrying out administrative tasks, budgeting, diplomacy, military affairs, and religious duties. The plebeian council was the assembly of the common people, and the decisions made by this council had the force of law for all Roman citizens. Thanks to the establishment of the republican system and the status of citizenship, the city-state of Rome on the Tiber River gained strength. The economy flourished, social security was stable, and the military force was formidable. Along with this, the demand for land also increased. This reality, coupled with the expansionist ambitions of the aristocracy, placed Rome under an urgent demand to expand and enlarge its territory. The first land that the Romans set their eyes on was the territory of the Uis people located between the two rivers No and Tiber. At this time, the Uis people had weakened, but they still resisted fiercely to preserve their territory. The final battle between the Uis and the Roman army took place in the city of Baum, situated on the right bank of the Tiber River. The Roman army continuously besieged and attacked the city for 10 years from 406 to 396 BC. The city of V was razed to the ground, and all its inhabitants were turned into slaves. After liberating the lands of the Uis people in the north, Rome began to expand its territory into the Latium plain. The opposition from the Latin community here was minimal, as the Latins themselves, being of the same ethnic origin, also wished to integrate into the Roman citizen body. Next, Rome began to extend its reach into the central Italy region, which was originally under the control of the Samnites. After nearly half a century, the Romans launched 3 major campaigns to conquer the Samnite lands. Finally, the Samnites reluctantly accepted defeat in 290 BC. The vast lands of central Italy came under Roman control. Riding on the momentum of this victory, Rome expanded its territory southward to control the Greek city-states in the far south and the island of Sicily. Large military campaigns were carried out. In the early 3rd century BC, the Romans defeated the Lucani and Campania in the south. In 280 BC, Rome fought a fierce battle with Tarentum, the strongest Greek city-state in southern Italy. In the final bloody battle at Benevento in 275 BC, the Tarentine army, led by King Pyrrhus, was completely defeated. The city-state of Tarentum fell into Roman hands, and other Greek city-states in southern Italy also gradually submitted. Rome had now mastered the vast southern part of the Italian peninsula. The year 270 BC is considered the year that marked the completion of Rome's conquest of all of Italy when they invaded and took control of the entire peninsula. Rome gained additional territories, including important southern ports, by learning shipbuilding techniques from the Greeks. For the first time, Rome established its own navy consisting of large warships. With their growing strength, Rome did not stop and continued their ambition to expand their territory. However, they encountered significant obstacles to the west in the Mediterranean from the power of Carthage, and to the east from powerful nations like Macedonia and Syria. The long wars between competing powers for dominance in the Mediterranean region erupted. The immediate cause of the Roman-Carthaginian War was the turmoil on the island of Sicily, where both nations sought to make it their own territory. After 2 major campaigns, the Roman army defeated Carthage. However, in 149 BCE, under the pretext that Carthage had violated the treaty, Rome launched a full-scale invasion. After 3 years of determined resistance in 146 BCE, Carthage was forced to surrender. Rome carried out a brutal massacre. The city of Carthage was set on fire, and its history was erased, becoming a part of the Roman world. After expanding and extending its territory to the eastern Mediterranean, Rome encountered powerful forces controlling the region, namely Macedonia and Syria. The Roman-Macedonian War truly began when Egypt requested Rome's assistance to regain its overseas territories that had been occupied by Macedonia. From 171 to 168 BCE, Rome launched a series of intense military campaigns with the aim of turning Macedonia into a Roman province. In 168 BCE, the Macedonian army was decisively defeated at the Battle of Pydna. Rome then divided Macedonia into 4 self-governing regions with no connections to one another, making them subordinate to Rome. By 147 BCE, Macedonia lost all its autonomy and became a full province of Rome. After defeating the 2 greatest powers, Carthage and Macedonia, Rome continued to expand its dominance over the entire Mediterranean region. The successive victories in these wars brought enormous rewards to Rome, including spoils of war such as gold, silver, jewels, and a vast number of slaves from the conquered territories. These wars caused significant upheavals in Roman society and created favorable conditions for the development of the economy and the system of slave ownership during the Republic period. From the 1st century BC, when Rome had become the dominant power in the Mediterranean, internal conflicts became the greatest threat to the Republic. The Senate stubbornly held onto power, continuously opposing important reforms. The soldiers who were more loyal to their commanders than to the city helped generals like Marius and Sulla dominate the city, and the Senate forcing them to concede. By the middle of the 1st century BC, the three men Crassus, Pompey, and Caesar gained control of the Republican government through a secret pact known as the First Triumvirate. After Crassus' death, the First Triumvirate collapsed, leading to a civil war between Caesar and Pompey. Caesar emerged victorious and was appointed dictator for life, but he was assassinated in 44 BC. The Second Triumvirate consisted of Octavius, Antonius, and Lepidus, but they quickly fell into a power struggle. Ultimately, Octavius defeated Antonius at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC and gained near absolute power. Although he did not officially declare himself emperor, Octavius effectively held power like a king. A new political system was established known as the Principate. In this system, the Senate still held an important role, but it was largely ceremonial, with actual power resting in the hands of Octavius. In 14 AD, Octavius passed away, and his position was passed on to his adopted son, Tiberius. The first dynasty, the Julio-Claudian, lasted from 27 BC to 68 AD. The Flavian dynasty, which lasted from 69 to 96 AD, although brief, helped stabilize the Roman Empire. During this period, under the rule of the Antonine dynasty 192, the Roman Empire reached its peak. However, from 193 to 235 under the Severan dynasty, the Roman Empire faced the major crisis of the 3rd century, with frequent assassinations and political upheavals, leading to the empire changing 28 emperors within just 50 years. From the late 3rd century to the early 4th century, the Roman Empire entered the post-imperial period. Emperors began to shed the republican cloak and strengthen the autocratic monarchy. In 330, Emperor Constantine moved the capital from Rome to Byzantium. By 395, Emperor Theodosius divided the Roman Empire into 2 parts, assigning governance to his 2 sons Arcadius in the east, with the capital at Constantinople, and Honorius in the west, with the capital at Rome. The Roman Empire officially split into 2 halves, effectively becoming 2 separate nations, the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire, each with a different historical fate. Meanwhile, the tribes living to the north of the empire, such as the Germans, Franks, and Anglo-Saxons, were in the final stages of primitive communalism and began migrating deeper into the territory of the Western Roman Empire. Finally, when the Western Roman Empire was in a state of deep crisis, the European tribes seized the lands of the Western Roman Empire and established their own kingdoms. In 476, a Germanic general named Odoacer rebelled, staging a coup and overthrowing the last emperor of the Western Roman Empire, Romulus Augustulus. From this point, the Western Roman Empire fell. Meanwhile, the Eastern Roman Empire continued to exist for nearly another 1,000 years, becoming the Byzantine Empire, which lasted until 1453, when it was conquered by the Ottoman Turks. Ancient Chinese civilization. China is one of the great centers of ancient civilization, home to 2 major rivers, the Yellow River Huanghe and the Yangtze River Chongjiang, which played a crucial role in the formation and development of the earliest civilizations in this region. Many archaeological sites from the Paleolithic period to the end of primitive society have been discovered in various regions across China. According to legend, in the Yellow River Basin, tribal leaders continuously succeeded one another, including figures such as the Yellow Emperor, Shouhao Zhuanshu, Emperor Ku Emperor, Ji Emperor, Yao Emperor, Shun, and Emperor Yu of the Xia dynasty. The legend says that when a tribal leader died, a council of tribes would elect a new leader. However, when the last leader, Emperor Yu of the Xia dynasty, passed away, his son Emperor Kai succeeded him. At this point, the practice of electing a tribal leader ended, and Emperor Kai became the king, marking the beginning of the Xia dynasty, the first dynasty in Chinese history, which lasted from around the 21st to the 16th century BCE. After the state was formed, development in many aspects remained quite limited. However, archaeological sites have been discovered, including stone tools, pottery implements made from bone, horn, and shell, and notably bronze artifacts, mainly rudimentary copper and only in small quantities. The state apparatus was still simple, and there was no writing system. The Xia dynasty lasted through 17 reigns from Xia Yu to Xia Zhai, spanning more than 400 years, but was eventually overthrown by the Shang dynasty. The Shang dynasty was established around the 16th to 11th century BCE and saw remarkable advancements compared to the Xia dynasty, especially in the widespread use of bronze and the strong development of trade. Writing also emerged during this time inscribed on animal bones or turtle shells known as oracle bone script. The Shang dynasty ruled through 30 generations of kings lasting around 600 years until it was overthrown by King Wu of the Zhou dynasty. After coming to power, the Zhou dynasty gradually conquered surrounding tribes and expanded its territory all the way to the East Sea. Realizing that the land was too vast for a single person to govern, the Zhou implemented a policy of enfeoffment, granting land to royal family members and loyal vassals, thereby establishing a system of feudal states. The Zhou king held central authority only in the capital Haojing. During this period, actual power was in the hands of nobles and regional lords who determined the allegiance of the feudal states. However, royal authority gradually weakened from the 8th century BCE as the Zhou dynasty faced frequent attacks and raids by Western tribes. To avoid further threats, the Zhou court relocated its capital to Luoyi. The Zhou dynasty is divided into two periods, the Western Zhou and the Eastern Zhou. The Eastern Zhou period is further divided into two sub-periods, the Spring and Autumn period and the Warring States period. Since moving the capital to Luoyang, the Zhou court gradually weakened. Although nominally still the son of heaven, the Zhou kings no longer had the power to control the feudal states. Stronger states such as Qi Jin Chu and Qin rose to prominence and began to exert authority over smaller states. Victorious feudal lords could declare themselves as hegemon. During the Spring and Autumn period, the state of Qi, originally a major nation with access to coastal trade routes, grew wealthy and powerful under the rule of Duke Huan of Qi. In 656 BCE, Qi, along with several other states, launched an attack on the state of Chu for refusing to pay tribute to the Zhou court, forcing Chu to negotiate peace. Afterward, Duke Huan of Qi was recognized by the other states as the hegemon. The state of Jin, located in the Shanxi region, was also a major state. In 636 BCE, Duke Wen of Jin, after wandering for 19 years, returned and was granted the title of king. Under the leadership of Duke Wen, Jin became powerful, and in 632 BCE it defeated the allied forces of Chu Chen and Qin at the Battle of Chengbo. Afterward, Jin was recognized as the hegemon. During the Warring States period, the state of Chu became more powerful and officially proclaimed itself king, refusing to recognize the emperor status of the Chu king. The state of Qin, originally a small state, had repeatedly expanded its territory and eliminated smaller vassal states. Qin also became a major power, ready to conquer the territories of the nomadic Rong tribes. When the battles for supremacy in the north began to subside, two states in the south, Wu in Jiangsu and Yue in Zhejiang, started to rise. The wars between Wu and Yue erupted multiple times. In 496 BC, the two states fought again, and the king of Wu Helu was wounded and died. His son Fuchai succeeded him to the throne, determined to avenge his father's death. In 494 BC, Fuchai defeated the forces of Yue. The king of Yue, Gojian, appeared to be humble, asking to submit to Wu and agreeing to become a tributary state. Afterward, Gojian lay on thorns and tasted honey, secretly preparing his forces, waiting for the opportunity to take revenge. Meanwhile, after defeating Yue, Fuchai led his army north to vie for dominance. In 482 BC, he organized a vassal conference to compete for supremacy with the state of Jin. Taking advantage of this, Gujian unexpectedly attacked the capital of Wu. Fuchai had to rush back and seek peace. By 473 BC, the state of Yue had officially destroyed the state of Wu. After defeating Wu, Gujian also marched north, convened a vassal conference, and became the hegemon. This event marked the end of the Spring and Autumn period and opened the era of the Warring States. After a long period of war between the major states and internal divisions within each state by the Warring States period, China was left with only 7 major states: Yanqi, Zhao, Wei, Hanshan, and Shu. Among them, the 3 states of Han, Zhao, and Wei were formed by the division of the state of Jin. Although the state of Yue was once a powerful force at the beginning of the Warring States period, it was annexed by the state of Chu in 306 BC due to internal strife. In addition, there were still several smaller states such as Luwei Songjung and Jie, etc. Entering the 4th century BC, the wars of conquest between the states escalated more than ever, making this period known as the Warring States period. Among the 7 states, Wei was the strongest in the early period, with ambitions to unify the remaining territories of the state of Jin. In 354 BC, the king of Wei sent General Pang Yuan to attack the state of Zhao in the north. In 342 BC, he continued to attack the state of Han in the south. However, both campaigns were defeated by the forces of Qi, led by Sun Ben. Not long after, Wei was attacked by Chen from the west, losing much of its territory, leading to its weakening. In the east, the struggle for supremacy mainly took place between the states of Qi and Yan. In 284 BC, in response to the growing power of Qi, Yan allied with Qin Zhao and Han to attack Qi. Most of Qi's territory was occupied by Yan. Although Qi later regained the land, it had lost its strength, was severely weakened. Meanwhile, the state of Qin in the west, though still backward at the beginning of the Warring States period, made a breakthrough with reforms under King Hui of Qin. He appointed Xiangyang, a politician of the legalist school, to implement reforms starting from 359 BC. The main content was to strengthen discipline, encourage agricultural production, and emphasize achievement in battle. Those who contributed were promoted, while those who did not were demoted. All these measures aimed to increase food production and train the military for war. Thanks to the reforms, the state of Qin became rich and powerful, discipline was tightened, and the military became elite. However, Xiangyang was harsh and cruel in his punishments, which led to resentment from officials and the people. After King Huiwen of Qin passed away, Xiangyang was captured and executed under the reign of King Huai of Qin. The growing power of Qin made the 6 eastern states fearful. In 333 BC, following the proposal of Su Qin, the prime minister of the state of Yan, the 6 states of Yan, Qi, Zhao, Wei, Han, and Chu formed an alliance called He Tung to resist Qin. However, due to deep conflicts between the states, this alliance only lasted for 3 years before dissolving. Afterward, the 6 states repeatedly reformed the He Tung alliance, but it remained unstable. In order to break the He Tung alliance in 328 BC, Zhang Yi, the prime minister of the Qin state, implemented a policy of divide and conquer, persuading the states to submit to Qin. This policy was called Lian Huang. In practice, it led to the gradual weakening of the eastern states, while Qin continuously achieved victories, successively defeating Zhao, Wei, Han, and Chu. The smaller states could not resist and were gradually annexed. The state of Chu, which had been weakened for a long time, split into 2 states, Western Chu and Eastern Chu, in 367 BC due to a dispute over the throne. Both of these states were eventually destroyed by Qin Western Chu in 256 BC and Eastern Chu in 249 BC. From here, China was left with only 7 major states, with Qin emerging as the dominant power. From 230 to 221 BC, under the leadership of King Yingzheng of Qin, the state of Qin gradually destroyed Hanzhao, Wei, Chuyan, and Qi. The Warring States period came to an end, and China was unified for the first time under the Qin dynasty. Ancient Indian civilization. India is a triangular peninsula located in the southern part of Asia, but it is almost separated from the rest of the continent by the Himalayas, the highest mountain range in the world, so it is often referred to as a subcontinent. With 2 coastlines bordering the sea, India has become an important stop on the east-west maritime route. Here, traces of humans dating back over 10 million years have been found. However, these traces are fragmented and without fossilized bones, the continuous development process cannot be fully determined. 2 Paleolithic cultures have been discovered dating back around 400,000 years, namely the Soan culture in the northwest and the Madras culture in the south. By the Neolithic period, traces have been found more widely across the entire subcontinent. In particular, the Neolithic culture flourished on the Indus River basin during the 4th and 3rd millennia BCE, laying the foundation for the emergence of the Bronze Age civilization, the Indus Valley civilization. Based on archaeological artifacts, it is determined that the Indus Valley Civilization existed from around 3000 to 1500 BCE, which coincides with the ancient civilizations of Egypt and Mesopotamia. During this period, agriculture, craftsmanship, and trade all flourished. The people had knowledge of grain storage and lived in urban environments that were rich both materially and spiritually. Writing was also used during this period. However, the Indus Valley Civilization gradually declined and was replaced by the Ganges Valley Civilization, which was associated with the arrival of the Arya people. Around 1500 BCE, the Aryan tribes migrated to the Ganges River basin, establishing villages and settled societies. They brought with them the technique of horse usage, while learning rice cultivation techniques from the local inhabitants, which quickly led them to transition from a nomadic lifestyle to settled agriculture. In the early 6th century BCE, many small kingdoms of the Aryans formed in the Ganges River Valley. Struggles for unification of this region took place in the latter half of that century. Around 700 BCE, the writing system of the Aryans emerged, and by around 500 BCE, it became widely used. The oldest texts are the Vedas Rig Veda, which document the early period when the Aryans arrived in India. The two epic texts, Ramayana and Mahabharata, reflect the situation in northeastern India from around 1000 to 700 BCE. Meanwhile, the Puranas are a collection of myths and folklore related to the lives of the people of India, reflecting the period from around 500 BCE to 500 CE. From the primitive communes, numerous small states formed along the banks of the Ganges River. These states were ruled by a king with a capital city serving as a type of ancient urban center. The ancient Indian states frequently competed and conquered one another. Among them, the kingdom of Magadha quickly rose to dominance. The first prominent king of Magadha was Bimbisara, who ruled in the 6th century BCE. This was also the time when Buddha Siddhartha Gautama, originally the prince of the small Sakya state at the foot of the Himalayas, emerged. Later, Sakya was annexed into the kingdom of Kosala. Bimbisara implemented many important policies to consolidate his power, reorganizing the administrative system, developing agriculture, and strengthening the military. However, his son Ajatashatru, who was eager and ambitious, assassinated his father to seize the throne in 493 BCE. Despite this, during his 32-year reign, Bimbisara expanded the territory and made Magadha the dominant power of the entire Ganges River Valley. In 360 BCE, Mahapadma Nanda ascended to the throne, founding the Nanda dynasty. This dynasty made several significant contributions, such as improving the irrigation system, reforming the tax system, and strengthening the military. When the Nanda dynasty ended in 321 BCE, Magadha had unified most of northeastern India. After the Nanda dynasty came the Maurya dynasty, named after the tribe of its leader, Chandragupta Maurya, a former general under the Nanda reign. Chandragupta solidified power within the country, conducted military campaigns, and established a vast empire. Under his rule, the Maurya dynasty controlled most of the Indian subcontinent. Chandragupta passed away in 297 BCE, and his son Bindusara succeeded him. Bindusara continued his father's military campaigns, expanding the territory to almost the entire subcontinent, except for the southern region, which submitted peacefully without the need for force. The only region that remained unconquered was Kalinga in the northeast. When Bindusara passed away, his son Ashoka ascended to the throne. Under Ashoka's reign, the Maurya dynasty reached the peak of its power. In 260 BCE, he waged the Kalinga War, a brutal battle that resulted in tens of thousands of deaths. However, it was this very war that awakened Ashoka, leading him to adopt a path of peace and embrace Buddhism. Ashoka promoted the establishment of diplomatic relations, sending envoys to neighboring countries, expanding trade, and improving roads and ports. He also strongly advocated for the spread of Buddhism, sending missions far and wide from Central Asia to Southeast Asia. The subsequent period from 232 BCE to 320 CE saw India enter a time of political fragmentation marked by constant warfare between various kingdoms. However, this was not a period of complete decline, but rather a phase of division that laid the groundwork for higher development and relative balance in each region. By 320 CE, the Gupta dynasty was established in the former territory of Magadha. The Gupta rulers quickly expanded their power, dominating most of northern and central India, while making many smaller kingdoms vassals. The Gupta period is considered the end of ancient India and the beginning of medieval India, a new era marked by remarkable advancements in culture, religion, and science and technology.